Welcome back. Now, the Nigerian Senate is currently working on some bills that seek to prevent the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria and deputy governors of the Apex Bank from participating in politics. The two bills have now scaled second reading in the Senate. Now, the move by the upper legislative house comes more than a year after the House of Representatives had passed for second reading now a similar bill to prohibit the governor, deputy governors, and directors of the Central Bank of Nigeria from partisan politics back in 2022. Now, both bills come on the heels of the attempt by the immediate past governor of the Central Bank, Godwin Emefiele, to run for the presidential ticket of the ruling All Progressives Congress APC at the party's primary election held in June 2022. Mr. Emefiele's action had shocked many at the time. In fact, Emefiele had even gone to court at the time to seek an interim order to shield him from being disqualified to contest the APC's primary. It's long been the convention that the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria and their deputies should not take part in partisan politics. Mr. Emefiele attempted to break that tradition. But to remove any ambiguity about the position of the law on the issue, Nigerian lawmakers are now moving to amend Section 9 of the CBN Act to clearly ban the CBN governor and deputies from participating in politics while they are in service. The lawmakers also called for the restructuring of the board of the Apex Bank and that the CBN should be repositioned to achieve its core mandate given the bank's pivotal role in the economy. Now, to speak more on this, I'm being joined on the program by political affairs analyst Victor Okai, who joins us, of course, in the studio. And joining us via Skype is Alexa Wilcox, who is a political and financial analyst. And I think, Mr. Wilcox, let me just start from you. What do you make of this move by the Senate? I mean, not surprising in any way at all.
Yeah, DEJI, thank you for having me. It's my utmost pleasure to be in your program. It's a wonderful time. Let me say this. We've never had it this bad with respect to the central bank. Ever since we know the secret of central bank, I think the closest we had to a politician, to somebody who wants to venture into politics, was the era of Professor Soludo, when he hobnobbed very closely with the powers that be then, that is, mean the PDP. I also understand the second that led to his appointment. So it's more of okay, let's get a technocrat. So when he came in, he began to hobnob with the powers that be. So he looks more political, but he never declares interest to be in partisan politics. Until we saw the emergence of Emefiele, who I think some powers that be threw caution to the wind and made him to breach the oath or what is required of him. So the move by the Senate is not unexpected because when it's required that a law is loose, there are some loose ends that people can apply to do other things that are not expected of them, then it's also necessary for you to look at the law and tighten, because the society evolves. And when the challenges comes up like we had, then there's also going to be a response by the appropriate authorities in order to forestall future occurrence. As a matter of fact, the CBN governor, the office of the CBN governor is that of a civil servant in all respect. Be you appointed from outside, be you from inside, you are a civil servant. That period you are elected, you are not appointed to hold that office. You are not supposed to be in partisan politics for whatever reason. You are not. So, but in Nigeria, everybody can find loopholes within the law and tell you it is not this, it is not that. And of course, before you know it, we begin to have issues on our hands. So I kudos to the Senate and let them have a concurrence with the House of Reps so that we can have a more prosperous and a more watertight CBN that will concentrate on its job and leave politics for the politicians.
All right, I'll get back to you now, Lester. Let me go to you, Victor. Were you shocked when the former CBN governor now, boldly chose to run for the presidency? Because even though he would argue that he never officially confirmed it, but the truth is that he did. I mean, we saw that he went to the extent of, he got the form and he bought cars and, everything was done. And at some point, even I was asking myself what gave him that boldness, even to the extent of going to court to prevent the court from disqualifying him.
Okay, first of all, under the Nigerian Constitution, he has a right to aspire for any public office like anyone else.
And that's what he tried to exploit.
Yes.
And that the CBN Act was not quite openly clear against him running.
Well, that is it. I mean, there's no law. If there's no law, there's no offense. Secondly, in the recent past, the ban on civil servants participating in politics was lifted. Okay? And although Alex called him a civil servant, he's a public servant. Appointees are usually politicians, most appointees. And so whether you are head of NTA, you are head of, what do you call it now, a minister or any of all the government appointees, most of these are political appointments.
But would it be right to choose to run for a political office while still holding that office?
Let me finish. No, there are two different offices. Okay, I mean,
because in the case of Emefiele, that's what he sought to do. He was still CBN governor.
I'm still trying to establish a few things.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I've not made my point yet. I'm just trying to establish a few things and then get down to answering the question properly. If we were to look at some of these factors, then you would say he was well within his right to aspire. But it may have shocked us because it was unprecedented. And frankly, the move by the legislature is an existential one. The reason being that they understand the power in that office, that if any man in an office like that aspires, he has so much influence and can have so much money at his disposal. And so politicians fear how powerful that position can be. And so I think that the reason they're making this is not so much because they love Nigeria or Nigerians, but it's more an existential move to preserve or protect themselves against what might be a monster tomorrow. I mean, in that position, all the banks will back you up. Everybody will want to back such a person, and that is fearsome and fearful as well. You know, I think that, for me, that is what it is, basically. But if we were to look at it, so it might be shocking because it's an Emefiele today, and we never expected that because nobody in that position has done that before. But it's not too different from what Sanusi did. He got political. He never ran for office, but he became very political, both in his outbursts and in his attitudes, you know, and in his, just generally, in the way he went about doing his job, especially towards the end of his tenure, against the former, President Goodluck Jonathan before he was removed. So that is a very powerful position. The legislators have come to realize that if you allow a man in a position like that to run for office, and the only way they can do it is through legislation. They cannot stop him through the courts. They cannot, because it's well within his rights. And legally, he can do it because any civil servant can belong to a political party now. I mean, this has been so in the last 2 or 3 years, I think. So, and more so is a public service office. It's not even a regular civil servant. It's a public servant. So that will be my reply at this moment. As we move on, then we can expand more on the topic.
Let me come to you. You are also a financial analyst. You look at the seeming damage, I should say, that that attempt to run by the former CBN governor now, the seeming damage it did to that institution. Just help us understand is it a damage that can be quantified, and how long do you think it will take for that institution to recover from it?
Thank you, DEJI. I tell you, Emefiele was a very fine gentleman, a very fine banker. But unfortunately, the office of the governor of central bank, maybe he never planned for it. And so it came to him in such a way that he needed some other powers to remain in that office. Remember, it was not the Buhari that appointed him, it was Jonathan. And then people expect that Buhari was going to sack him, but Buhari did not. Rather, Buhari sustained him for the first 5 years and still reappointed him for another 5 years. So That means there were some powers behind the throne. And so unfortunately, he allowed those powers. From financial point of view, I mean, I'm sure Victor is a very sound financial analyst. We've met on various fora. You see, when a man become compromised, because you are managing the very biggest sector of any economy, that is talking about the monetary policy. And Victor has painted it clearly. It's a very powerful office that you can make and unmake. Now, your policies is what drives the economy. So you are totally in charge of monetary policy, while the bureaucrats are in charge of fiscal policy. And there is a handshake. So your actions and inactions can create a very major, which is what we saw. Now, in his attempt to want to run for office, like let me say this. Yes, the constitution gives him right to run as a citizen, but the constitution does not say you will remain in office and run. It says you will resign 3 months to the primaries of your party. So even at the point of you picking up interest, you are supposed to have vacated that office 3 months before the primaries of your party. So when you sit in the office and you want to hold on to the office and want to run for an office, then you have breached the constitution. So whatever things people are telling you that you can do this, you can do that, is out of the way. I mean, of course, the courts can always be swayed, but the law is clear. 3 months before you go for the primaries, you must resign. Now, if you don't resign, you're giving yourself a lot of advantage. Emefiele damaged so much in the economy based on his interest, and then secondly, based on the fact that when his interest was not realized, he now tried to sabotage the interest of those that were supposed to run. How do I mean? The policies that came out of the CBN towards the election, towards the time of the election, that caused so much economic distortion, we are yet to come out from it. Because that alone created a lot of price instability, created foreign exchange instability, and so many other economic ripples that we are yet to come out of. That is to tell you how somebody's interest holding such a powerful office can create. I think it will take some time. Maybe the Emefiele factor is fast going away. Nigerians forget so easily. We now back to our normal spend. We now have money to spend. We now have cash to spend. We are coping with the price increases, because remember, during that period, inflation jumped, because when people don't have money to buy, the people that have money to buy, the price of goods and services went up, because the sellers also want to maintain a very high margin or their previous level of income, so they jacked up price and it doesn't come down. So these are some of the negative effects that we had. But nothing is static. Economy is a system that keep moving and keep reforming itself. We hope we'll be able to come out of it. And the actions of the National Assembly is not to protect themselves. I will not buy that, but to protect the system. If you want to contest for the office, it's your right. Then you take the constitutional way. You resign from the office, give way 3 months to your party's primaries, and even for that office, you should even give way a year, because 3 months to the party, you will have done all the damages. So if you have interest, you give way and then pursue your interest, which is your legitimate right. Civil servants are allowed to be in partisan politics, but you must resign if you want to contest an election 3 months to the primaries of your party. That is the law. So if you are not doing that, then you're also breaching the law.
Victor, how important is it that the lawmakers are moving to amend the CBN Act? Because the impression everyone had from the very beginning is that the CBN Act actually prohibits a sitting governor of the central bank from running for office. But it was during Emefiele's time that we saw that there was a loophole in that act, and it was that loophole that he tried to exploit. So how important is it now that the lawmakers are moving to block this loophole?
Okay, so I've not seen the details of the amendment they're trying to bring about, but I think what would have been more important, judging for what happened in the last administration, is that I think that what the National Assembly should have concerned itself more with is the independence of the CBN governor. And the reason I say so is this. When you have a CBN governor who is beholden to the executive, then the rest of us are in trouble. The reason is that his better judgment will fly out the window. We have seen the kind of monetary policies that, you know, especially towards the end of the last administration, that were carried out by the CBN governor. Some of them, if you ask me, are things that are against his better judgment. But when you are, as we say, doing all right, sir, to the executive, and you feel that you must please the executive, then you come up with policies that will please the executive and may just put the economy in trouble. You will recall, just to give a humorous example now, what happened during Idi Amin Dada's time. I think it was in the movie, or we saw it also, where he sacked the CBN governor for refusing to print more currencies, so to say, you know, because for him, how can you tell me there's no money? Go and print money, you know? So when you have a CBN governor, if a CBN governor is not independent, that's what happens. To be in that office, you must be competent, to a reasonable level at least, you know? And the executive does not know as much. He may have an idea, but you're the expert in that area. And so you should be able to advise. And so if he comes to you and says, it must be this way, you can say to him, thank you very much, sir, but I do not think that this is in the best interest of our economy, both in the medium and short term. Maybe, I mean, and the long term. Maybe in the short term, yes, but it's just going to put our economy in trouble. And so, and then also be insulated from being fired. You know, although these days, I don't know if the laws are being respected anymore about firing and hiring in such positions. So if all that is done is just say, don't participate in politics, for me, it's not a big deal. It doesn't say, it doesn't change anything. Emefiele could not have done what he did without some sort of nudge. Because if the president felt, the sitting president at the time felt that, I mean, Emefiele does not seem to me like a person who has a kind of balls or liver to take such a, if you excuse my language, to take such a decision. He must have been encouraged, one way or another, to throw his hat in the rings. Otherwise, he does not seem to be like somebody who has that kind of courage, you know. And also, notice, you know, if you call that bad behavior, there was no consequence. The president did not rebuke him. The president didn't chide him. So we seem to be crying more than the bereaved, in a manner of speaking. If he was not encouraged, he would never have had the courage to do that. I think the executive is more to blame for this than Emefiele himself. Emefiele, I think, was just, it's like the issue of the change of currencies and all that. There's no way he could have made that move without, you know, the assent of the executive. So when we see things like that, we just see a scapegoat, you know, and then everybody just piles things and say, Emefiele did this, Emefiele did that. But the real people behind it,
you're quite right, because he was never called to order. The executive never called him to order.
So no one is talking to who the real people are. And unfortunately, he's a scapegoat, and he's protecting them.
But he accepted to be used.
I mean, I had no choice. He had to do
that. He gambled on it, and at some point he got very serious. To have bought that number of vehicles,
he couldn't have,
those
and
it
was not questioned.
And you know, the kind of money that was spent on that project.
Who does that?
Huge amount of money.
So these are things Nigerians were not asking questions. Who would have, which public or civil servant will have the courage? You are still in office, you are buying that many cars, and you are in charge of the central bank, and at the end of the day, EFCC at the time did not call you to order. No, I mean, let's look at things properly.
Okay, we have to round up, but let me just quickly go to you, Alester. You look at what is happening to Emefiele now. You think it's, you know, what he's facing at the moment is basically as a result of some of these, especially the decision to run. And when you consider the huge amount of money that was spent on that process, the question you ask is, where did the money come from? Where did he get the money to do all of that? So you tend to get the impression that the current authorities are going after the money, but it's like the money cannot be found, if you like.
No, you see, the truth of the matter is, I think Victor tried to nail it very well, but although he's also trying to be on the safe side, the truth of the matter is, Emefiele made himself a scapegoat. He said it clear that Emefiele is a fine gentleman, but when he got an office that he knew he wasn't, he doesn't have the capacity for, he has to look for powers in order to protect him, because nobody expected that Emefiele would survive Buhari. Nobody expected it. And then to the point that even if he survived his first tenure, to the point that I think he served 3 years with Buhari, a bit 2 years during the Buhari's administration. Then for him to have a renewal, there must be some powers behind it. It is not Emefiele, it is not Buhari, it is the powers that want to run things with Emefiele. And we saw some of the controversial things we know Emefiele did. For instance, some of the loans he gave, we hear of the story of the acquisition of what do you call it? Is it Nine Mobile now or what? How some powerful group got CBN loan to buy that entity. It is Salat at the time, now changed to Nine Mobile. We saw how the anchor borrower scheme for rice production was handled. The billions of naira under Emefiele that was released to persons as loans, there were interest behind it. We also saw what the kind of amount of corruption and money that Emefiele pretended over in the COVID intervention, COVID loan intervention to institutions and to companies. So these are some of the actions that Emefiele took that to everybody we know that these are corrupt actions that are haunting the economy. So when Emefiele wakes up to say he wants to run for president, of course, like Victor said, the man does not look like a man that has the balls. He doesn't have the capacity. Some people who see him as a willing tool and can make use of him are the ones that propelled him. All those cars could not have been bought by Emefiele. He may not have that money. They might be bought by the same interest. Remember, at some point, there were so many contradictions from the presidency. Oh, they are interested in Oshibajo. Oh, they're interested in Amechi. They're interested in... nobody mentioned Emefiele. So there was other interest that was interested in Emefiele. So those are... And then, so, you see, when you find yourself in such a situation, I think the best thing to do is to toe the path of honor. Emefiele ran a bank for almost 10 years before he was appointed governor of Central Bank. And you've been there for close to 8 years plus. So if at that point you are asked to do what you know it is wrong, and your conscience is not clear to do it, I think the best option would have been to throw in the towel. Because what else do you need? Now, you didn't take that honorable path, and so the consequences have caught up with you. Because everybody knows it is not Emefiele that was doing these things. There was some interest behind it, and those interests was what Emefiele could not resist, and now he's paying for it. So right now he's going through the trials, he's going through the whole thing. They are looking for the money, and they may not get all the money, but they might get some of the money. But me, it is not stopping at getting the money. It is getting to the real brains behind most of Emefiele's action. He made himself a willing tool. He made himself a scapegoat. And so when you do such and refuse the path of honor and want to hold the sword for the people, then whatever comes out of it, you should hold yourself accountable and not any other person. He's only suffering from what he fails to do that he ought to have done if honor has been allowed to play.
There's something, just before we go, there's something I want you both of you to react to. Because some people have made the argument that, look, maybe the CBN Act does not need to be amended. Maybe there's no need to amend the CBN Act, to prevent the governor and his deputies from taking part in partisan politics. That Section 9 at the moment might just be fine. But I want to read Section 9, and then you give me your impression if you think that section is okay the way it is, or it needs amendment so that it becomes very clear as to what should apply when it comes to partisan politics. And this is what Section 9 says, and let me read that. It says, the governor and deputy governors shall devote the whole of their time to the service of the bank, and while holding office shall not engage in any full or part-time employment or vocation, whether remunerated or not, except such personal or charitable causes as may be determined by the board and which do not conflict with or detract from their full-time duties. That is actually Section 9. And you know, when Emefiele contested, this became a very debatable issue. And I'm asking both of you now, and let me start with you, Lester. What do you make of that Section 9? Do you think it is ambiguous? And that's the reason why Mr. Emefiele tried to exploit it? And so it needs to be amended so that it's very clear and, you know, clear and unambiguous.
No law can be, yes.
Take part in partisan politics.
No law can capture everything in one fell swoop. Even our constitution, that's why today we are still battling with the constitution. No law can capture everything. That is why it becomes sense of interpretation. So the layman, to both of us, is clear. Don't engage in any vocation, either remunerated or not. It's clear. But it is that same thing that people took to court, and the court gave I don't know the kind of judgment the court gave. So when issues like this arise, they throw up new challenges. And so that is why the system should also try to prevent it, to make it more clearer. For instance, what did some of the prayer candidates took to take to court? 25% in FCT. So now we've gotten a clarity on that. So there's no need to amend the constitution. We've gotten a clarity on that. So unless there was also a clarity on the part of from the court that this is prohibited, let them go and amend it. Yes, there should not be any need. As a matter of fact, Nigerian constitution is so big. You know, we say that the US constitution is as little as something you can put in your back pocket. And they've operated with it for over 250 years. Our own is so voluminous, yet every day lawyers are looking for loopholes in that voluminous document. Not even only that, after that we have acts, we have other laws, and yet lawyers are still looking for loopholes. So there will not be an end. But as far as I'm concerned, so long as there is challenge and we can afford the luxury of looking at the law, that is what they are paid to do. Nothing more, nothing less. So they should look at it, and if they feel it is not adequate based on our peculiarities, we're a very funny set of people. We can take anything to the court because there's no sanction for lawyers taking any case to the court. They will tell you it is their right, just like we are saying now. Ever have a right? It's a right. It's a right. It's a right. But so in other jurisdictions, before you take a matter to court, you'll satisfy yourself that the chance of you winning is high. Because any attempt to waste the cost time of frivolities, it is at a cost to you. But in Nigeria, it's not so. So as far as I'm concerned, so long as we can take frivolous cases to court, and there's no severe cost in terms of penalties, let us keep tweaking our laws to make it more stringent so that the ambiguity will be less in all of them.
Victor, you look at this Section 9. To be candid, if you ask my personal opinion, I think it's ambiguous, it's not very clear, and I can understand this has not been tested in court. The case that actually went to court was Emefiele asking the court to disqualify, to prevent his disqualification, and the court, of course, threw that case out. But as to whether as a sitting CBN governor at the time, he was qualified to run for political office, that was not tested in court. And you look at Section 9 that I have just read, if you ask me, it's ambiguous. So do you think that's the reason why the lawmakers want to lay everything to bed by coming out clean so that even the common man on the street understands this?
Well, we might argue that the clauses in that particular section may be subject to abuse. But what is in that section is almost relevant to almost everyone who is in public service. Once you take up appointments, you're not expected to do anything else, you know? So it's clear and general to everyone else. It's the same thing. Maybe for the purpose of clarity, but I told you, the reason the legislators are doing this is just for me, it's not necessarily for you and I. That's the truth. It's for their own selfish reasons.
Maybe it's for the benefit of our economy because we don't want our central bank government.
Well,
to
we
get
can
involved
say
in
that. We
politics,
can
yes.
say that there's that as well, which is also a good point because we don't need that distraction. Clearly, stay focused. But I wish they would go a step further and insulate the governor from politics completely through the appointment process, through the governance, through the process of, if you like, governance and oversight, such that he's responsible to Nigerians, not to any individual. If that happens, then we have a better, then we are sure that that seat is secured and whoever is there will work in the interest of Nigerians.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for coming on the program and thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's how much we can take on the program this week. But thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.